So this is part two of the Wilton Estate part of Eston Mines, with a few add-ons. Challoner Pit at Gisborne's is outside the Wilton Estate. So the tramway came along here. This is Lovellville Quarry in here. Down here, past this area which we call the swamps, a site of special scientific interest. And then it came down here, across these fields. This is Dunsdale Farm, which only the buildings remained, the rest of it was demolished. Went on a little bridge here, where the farm track went across, onto this embankment, and then all the way down here to Challoner Pit. And this little building here was the Moordale hauler, a big engine that hauled sets of wagons or sets of tubs out of Challoner Pit, and then they were pulled from there to the engine house, the Wilton hauler, and then from the Wilton hauler they were pulled along to the SS Castle, and then at the top of Newbank there was another engine which pulled them from the SS Castle to the top of Newbank, and they were run down the incline there to Tippling Sidings, and then they were taken from there by another engine at the back of the houses in Eston, and they were run down into the tip yard, all done on ropes. An awful lot of wire hawser. This is all that remains of Dunsdale Farm. Demolished, I would think, probably in the 60s. And I'm standing on top of the bridge. The tramway from Wilton Hauler came down here and under here, and along this embankment here you can see the concrete remains of the bridge. It's all been filled in. This is the tramway as it comes along and goes over Moreland Beck. Well, this is a culvert that carries Moreland Beck or Model Beck under the tramway. And you can see there it's dated 1914. You can see through the top culvert, it actually crawled through here, but the water disappears into two pipes, one here and one there, all just covered with debris. So this is obviously where it overflowed, went down there when there was a big flood on. So this is the culvert at the other end. You can see these pipes here, a sort of big flange on the end, as if they had some other purpose. They're metal. But no date stone on this side, it all seems to have gone. The tramway came across this field here, from Challoner Pit. This was the hauler that was pulled them. This great lump of concrete is about all that remains of Moordale hauler. It's all completely overgrown, but see an odd relic there. Bits of concrete laid all over the place. This is Court Green Farm, which is still there. And the main seam came round here. and it was quarried at this point. And then they started mining underground. And just in this wood here somewhere, there's a great big hollow oak tree. And just upstream of it is a collapsed drift, which you used to be able to get into. It was a dangerous place to go mine. And this is Moreland Beck. And somewhere just in this little bit here is where the remains of the boiler plates are that prevented the beck from flooding into the mine workings. Over at Court Green, just upstream of a big hollow oak tree on the side of Moreland Beck, was this collapsed drift, which you could get into. As lads, we went down there. I only went down once. It was in a parlour state then. I don't know whether it'll still be there. And when you went down there, this is what you saw. It was you could go along this board for quite a long way, but eventually you had to sort of squeeze along on your stomach. I suspect you can still get down there, but this, as I say, this was way back in 1967. I went down and had a look. I was pleased to get out, I know that. Moreland Beck, or Moreland Beck as we used to know it, which runs down from Pit Top, eventually out to sea somewhere down Saltburn way. To prevent the water from the mine, from the beck, filtering its way down into the mine workings over at Court Green, they used scrap boiler plates which they got from Smith's Dock shipyard, and they lined the whole of the bed of the beck all the way down for a couple of miles with these things. When the mines closed, then the scrap men took most of it away, but there's just this little remnant remaining. And this is Pit Top. These were the little row of houses here, and a chapel. And they'd all just about all gone when I was a kid. But this was a big sandstone engine house, winding house. And here there were two big shafts. One was open. You could peer down it into the depths. We used to throw great lumps of stone down. It used to take ages to reach the bottom, great big splash. Anyway, they eventually decided that they were very dangerous, and they capped them. They tried to collapse them with explosives, but it didn't work. So eventually they capped them and covered them over, and there's hawthorn bushes growing on them now. In fact, you wouldn't know where they were now, but you'd know from that map where to find them. This is Pit Top, on top of Barnaby Moor. This is the little village, a little row of houses here and a chapel. And this is the winding house. Right next to it were a couple of really deep shafts. They were never used for extracting iron ore. They were mainly used for servicing and ventilation. There were two shafts. One was used for carrying sort of men up and down, and the other one was used for carrying equipment up and down. And these are the spoil heaps when they were building, sinking the shafts at Pit Top, or Barnaby as it was called, Barnaby Moor. And this little swamp in front of me is where Moreland Beck begins. See that ICI boundary stone there. Moreland Beck goes the way down there. Eventually out to St Saltman somewhere. It was the southern boundary of the estate. This was the shaft at pit top, which was open all down one side there. It was 600 feet deep. So the landowner had painted on the side there, and if you peered down through here, it just dropped off into an abyss. How nobody was killed, I have no idea, because there was kids up there all the time, from Eston and Grangetown. Well, I suppose if you fell down, nobody would know. Huge pumps for pumping water out of the pit, because the bottom of the shaft was a very lower level than the entrances at Eston, and the water used to rise up. When the pits closed, the water just rose up and started flowing out the drift entrances at Eston. They tried filling them in, but eventually they just capped them and put this great pile of shale and stone on top of them to stop kids messing about and risking falling in. Huge pumps for pumping water out of the pit, because the bottom of the shaft was a very lower level than the entrances at Eston, and the water used to rise up. When the pits closed, the water just rose up and started flowing out the drift entrances at Eston. They tried filling them in, but eventually they just capped them and put this great pile of shale and stone on top of them to stop kids messing about and risking falling in. So this is just crossing over Moreland Beck at this point, looking towards pit top, and this is all completely overgrown. You can still see in the water there the iron oxide, evidence of its industrial past. And this is Upsall Pit as it used to be in the 1920s. Great big chimney there it was steam powered. It wasn't, I think it was electrified about 1918. But initially it was steam powered. And this is the remains of the chapel, as I remember it, which was at Upsall Pit on Barnaby Moor, way behind Eston, where the shafts were that went down to the main seam. There was very little of it remaining when I was there. There were a little row of houses, but most of them were in ruins. But there was one family still living there, a family called Coles, who used to have a shop. Not much remains of pit top, just this huge ball here, evidence of heavy machinery, a big engine of some description, probably driving a big fan. And to the north of the houses at pit top at Barnaby Moor was this little reservoir, which you can see marked on the maps. This is all that remains of it. I just turn round. This is where the houses stood. this is all that remains of Barnaby Moor. I wonder what archaeologists will make of it in the future. Big pile of rubble and some slates. This is where the houses were. And in front of them this garden area. Big relic there of a lilac bush. I wonder who planted it. The very far building on the west end there was the school. And this little road going down towards Gisborough, it passed between the houses. There were some more houses on this side, including the chapel. A tin sheet chapel was on this side. This is just to the northwest of the gardens at Pit Top. I suspect it was to do with the septic tank drainage. This is a detailed plan of Challoner Pit when it closed in 1939. And there you can see the average. See that ironstone there, 11 feet 6 thick. When it was taken out, huge spaces under the ground. The thick black line is the outcrop. In other words, the boundary of where the ironstone finished. And we could just have a look at it in some detail. So if we start at Challoner houses on Wilton Lane, which are still there, and we can follow this outcrop all the way around. Eventually you come to the road to Redcar, which is this road here. This is Thornton Fields Farm, and you can see that there were roadways underground and some workings on that side of the road, on the east of the road. Carlinhow Farm being outside the outcrop, it still remains. And this is Dunsdale, which of course is still there. And we just come down the road, you will see there, these are the Dunsdale workings. This huge area here, all worked to the west of Dunsdale. And then we come west of Challoner. Then we come first of all to Northcote Farm, which is again is still there. And you'll see that the mining boundary went round the outside, so that there was no mining underneath the farm, theoretically speaking. Practically, I think it was probably a different matter. And then come along here, and this is Park House. There used to be a great big house up here, which I think the Challoner family, Lord Gisborough's family, lived in at one time. And it was still there when I was a kid, in the 60s. It used to stand right on the edge of the hill. It was quite an imposing structure. Huge fireplaces, I remember, inside it. But since been demolished. Just follow the boundary round. and you come to, this is Moreland Beck. This is where it goes under Wilton Lane, and then away down to Dunsdale. You come along Wilton Lane from Challoner Pit. You can see this huge area to the east of Wilton Lane, which was a quarry. The whole thing was just, it was so close to the surface they quite simply quarried it. And then once they'd quarried this all off, then they started putting drifts in. And in this area here, talking about 2013, they're talking there about building huge wind farm. Whether they'll ever go off the ground, I don't know. But if you take all three areas of the mine, you can see they're all labelled Gulf. And across, you can see there, this is labelled Gulf, and this bit over here is labelled Gulf. What that means is the whole seam has been taken out. A great layer of rock has been taken out, using board and pillar methods, but eventually the pillars are taken out and the whole lot is just left to collapse. And it produces subsidence on the surface. Because the seam was up to 11.6 thick, when it collapsed you get great holes in the surface which filled up with water to form thousands of ponds. So why they would want to build some substantial structure on this Gulf area, I have no idea. It strikes me as madness. Anyway, it's all gone. And this whole area here, the Dunsdale area, was used as the landfill for the local big towns. Mountains and mountains and mountains of stuff were put in there for years and years and years. Right away across here, all the way across there, and all the way to Dunsdale. This is the surveyor, Ernest Tippett, and his statement. Stone Elderfield gave me a great mass of information about working on in Eston mines. And it was quite difficult because he was trying to describe things for which there was no photograph or no diagram. One in particular I remember is I think called a spring, which fits on the front of a set of trucks, a set of wagons, or tubs as they were sometimes called. And it was an automatic release thing for releasing the cable, and alongside the tramway at various points where the haulers were and the sidings were was a sort of iron bar by the side of the tramway which hung over the tramway, and as the set of wagons approached this thing, I think it was called a joy, it would smack this spring, and the rope would be disengaged, and the a set of trucks or a set of wagons would trundle away into a siding somewhere, and they were usually braked by the tail rope on the back end. And we spent a long time trying to draw this spring, but it was a very frustrating business. But I had many fascinating conversations with him. It's a great shame that he didn't write it all down himself. So what I'll do is I'll just type it up on page by page and stick it on the internet so that you can watch it with your pause button. Those of you who've got an interest in Eston mines, because he was one of the very last men out of Eston mines. He's on that photograph of the last shift coming out of the trustees. It was called trustee because it was the original royalty belonged to a woman called Lady Hewley. It was one of the biggest royalties on Eston mines. They made a vast sum of money out of it. And of course, I think when she died, the trustees of her estate took over, and that's why the full title is the Trustee of Lady Hewley's Drift, but it just became known as Trustee Drift. Fascinating bit of information. Take care.